We're not out there half-stepping. It's going to go fast. That's probably the biggest lesson I can tell you by experience. It is going to go fast. So be locked in.
Hey there, and welcome to the Recruiting Masters Podcast, Episode 2 of the New Year, brought to you by the CFC Insider. I'm Katie Burt, alongside Clint, Uttley. Before we get started, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, @ChatFootball, Instagram, CFC_football, and YouTube. And don't forget to sign up for your silver, gold, or platinum CFC Insider membership. Just hit the subscribe button for access to rankings, analysis, and all the good daily football recruiting news from across Canada. Clint, how are you?
Good, yourself?
Good. So you just came back from the Moose Jaw Combine. We're going to talk a little bit about that and the recap of how that went and some players that really stuck out to you. Before we do that, on Friday the 17th, we're going to be doing our BC Combine in Surrey on Friday from 12 to 3. We'll see how that goes with all of the rare snow that we get in BC right now.
It is impacting things, yes, most definitely.
We've got some kids coming in from Kelowna and the island and up north, so we're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. We are not canceling that, but we may have to figure out some other logistics with that combine depending on weather. Sunday, January 19th, is going to be our combine in Montreal, headed up by Adrian, who's going to be doing that one, correct?
Adrian Davis.
Yep.
I've known him for quite some time, ever since his days at Vanier, and then for those of you who don't know, Adrian went on to play at Marshall, and then I think he finished up maybe a year in the U Sports, and then he was off to the CFL for a long time. I think he might have played, and correct me if you feel like it, between 8 and 10 years. So Adrian had a long CFL career, played down in the States, was a legend at Vanier. Don't tell him that. Go to his head. And he currently now has a pretty successful strength and conditioning
athletic academy
in the Montreal area. And I don't know what other people think. I think he looks like The Rock, a skinny version of The Rock.
Yeah, he does. I met him for the first time last year at the Combine, and he's a lovely fellow. I thought he was.
He's
great.
Awesome. Adrian's awesome. Yeah, everything's positive, which is exactly the kind of people you want to surround yourself with. People who just keep everything in a positive light and just have really good energy, which he has bundles of, and it kind of explains why his athletic academy is doing so well.
And then on January 25th, we are back in Burlington for a third tryout, as well as that's combined with the Fox 40 Prospect Challenge tryout. And then our last one on January 31st is in Winnipeg. And then the deliberations begin.
Yeah, there's already been a lot of deliberations. It's ongoing as you go through it, but yeah, it's been pretty positive to date. Last year, I think like 30% of the two rosters, when you combine them, it gives you like 80 players, so two 40-man rosters. I'm pretty sure that like 30% of those rosters came from the first round of the tryouts. So for those who don't understand, the first round of the tryouts for the CFC prospect game don't include the 150s or the 100s.
Some of them. There are some that come.
Some that come, but a lot of them, we move automatically to the second round. But that being said, last year, like 30% of those two rosters was from the first round, which essentially means they're players we had never seen before. Mm-hmm. And they not only push themselves onto the roster for the prospect game, they push themselves onto the list. So it's been pretty encouraging. The first round's been really encouraging, and then we got a big finish here. We'll have one in BC, and then we're going to have one in Winnipeg, and then is the Montreal one? It's running this weekend, isn't it?
The 19th, Sunday. Yep.
Yeah, Sunday. And then Manitoba's the last one.
Yep.
And then the deliberations start, but the locations we've already done the combines in, we have a pretty good idea of who's going through and what's happening with that. But yeah, the hope is we get it all done, and then I think it's mid-February. The players who are going through to the second round will be invited. And then the players who aren't going through, well, they'll get an email. I know that's not the best way to do it. But last year, I called everybody, which included like close to 200 kids, and told 80 of them they were through. and then another 130 that they weren't.
That's a fun phone call.
That was probably, well, coming with a university background, you're used to talking and just talking straight to people.
Yeah.
And you don't really get rattled by if a kid gets cut or maybe you'll see him through it and talk to him and help him understand about it. Like just doing those one-off phone calls to like 16-year-olds that like, no, you didn't make it. Good luck. I did like 120 of those last spring and it was like a really depressing week for me. So this year you're getting an email and I'm not laughing at the fact you're not making the team.
No.
I'm just saying like I got to save myself some sanity. So mid-February you're going to get a phone call or an email.
That being said, Moose Jaw.
Moose Jaw was awesome.
The Scouting Bureau had given me some feedback right away that I had tweeted out. And there were some players that you know, this was our first time doing the Combine in Saskatchewan. We weren't really sure. I mean, we know that there's great football being played there and great players, but this being our first time, we weren't really sure what we were going to get in Moose Jaw. You said that that you were really surprised and pleasantly so with the turnout and the talent that you saw there. Who really popped out, or did you find any sleepers in the group, or just give us a summary of what you thought of that Combine particularly?
Well, we went there. There was 2 players from last year. One of them made the game, and he came back. It was Cam.
Friesen.
Yeah, center.
Lineman, yeah.
Interior offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And then there was a receiver, Rhett Vavra, who almost made the game last year, but had ridiculous testing scores last year. He's obviously grown up, or as we like to say in CFC land, gotten longer and taller. Yeah. So, but he did once again impress with his numbers. So those are the guys who we kind of were like, what's going on? Expect something pretty solid. But then there was like Grant Ellis came out of nowhere.
Garrett
Correction on my part. So Garrett Ellis, he had some ridiculous test scores from the 4.68 laser to his broad jump was really good. All of his tests were good. Max, is it Polishuk?
It looks like, yeah.
Yeah, Max Polishuk was probably the most physically impressive prospect at the tryout. And he did broad jump 10 feet, which was pretty impressive.
And his vertical was...
His vertical was like...
is he the kid that had the 35-inch vert?
He had a 35.3-inch vertical.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. The funny part about the broad, like there was a couple things going on at that point. The longest broad jump was like 9.3 something. And Rhett Vavra pulled off his necklace and he laid it out at 9.4.
No, he didn't.
He did. Laid his necklace out at 9.4. Awesome. It was like jumping for the gold. And he literally put it 1 inch ahead of, at that point, the leading score or the best score. And then he hauled off and he literally jumped the 9.4. And I had the meter stick right behind him, so I stuck it right behind his seal right away. And it was 9.4. So, I mean, it was really impressive. So, yeah, there was Garrett and Max and Rhett were probably the most impressive when it came to all the scores that came in, or the tests that came in. There was a couple other who's the other kid? Had outstanding test scores, but also had, as I like to say, had the best name at the Combine. That would be, take a guess, Katie? You got it, Hunter Eagles. Like, check that out, eh? Like, and he plays like DB. So he's in the back end hunting. He's soaring above things, looking to strike his prey.
Oh, wow.
Anyways, so there was Hunter Eagles, and he just had the right demeanor. He reminded me of a young Elliot Richardson, so I thought that was awesome. And if Hunter, you listen to this, look up who Elliot Richardson is, because he did play in the CFL for a fair amount of time and is now the best strength coach in Canada at one of the best universities in Canada, Acadia Axeman.
You're too much.
Yeah. Okay. And then the best lineman that jumped out at me, really jumped out, and yes, Cash Cuthbert, I would say he's improved dramatically, but needs to continue to improve and get his strength up. But there was Reese McCormick
yeah.
from Yorkton, who, if you can imagine, I think on his sheet it said 6'1". He looks a little taller than 6'1", so maybe I'll give him 6'2" and 305. But imagine 6'2", 305, but like there was no fat, and his stance was awesome. His takeoff was, yeah, there was no fat. He was like a V.
Wow.
There was, when you see him in the second round, when you see him in the second round, like he was impressive. Remember last year we came across the kid from Fort Mac in Edmonton.
Oh, Dylan Remillard.
Dylan blew my mind last year.
I know, he blew all our minds.
Okay, so this is
that kid.
This is the kid,
oh.
But he's not as twitchy as Dylan was.
Yeah.
But he is not far off.
Dylan's quite a bit taller.
Yeah, but this kid is he is a beast. He'll be a beast. And even if you want to be like, oh, switch him to O-line, he could probably move into the interior of the offensive line and be like an all-conference center somewhere. So Reese really jumped out to me among some other kids, but like Hunter Eagles, best name ever, And then there was the three kids we talked about: Barbara, Garrett, and Max. There was other players. I'll be honest with you, from the first round tryout in Moose Jaw, I'm going to say there's probably like 25, 30 kids out of the 80 plus who I'm going to lean for them going to the second round easy. There's a lot of kids, I can see why they've done so well the last few summers.
Overall, let's talk about not just the prospect game and being considered for the second round, but in terms of our CFC 100, 150, and 200 rankings, there's been a few that have made their way onto the rankings from these tryouts, or
there will be these kids who are going to get invited to the second round will no doubt, because they're all 2021 or 2022. They're going to go onto a list at some point here in the near future. We just need to get through the invitation part, and then we'll start circling back and putting them on the list. And then there's like the 5 or 6 2020s.
Yeah.
Who it's late, I get it, but I get it. We've just started to pick up steam with our stuff. We were a list kind of entity for a long time, and now we kind of are multifunctional.
And that's why we encourage players to come to our events. No, you do not need to come to our events in order to be ranked. If you're good enough, we'll find you and you'll get on. However, it is always beneficial at any event, if you're being evaluated in person, that you have a chance to be ranked with our rankings.
Oh, yeah.
So I know there's some grumblings of people saying that we only rank people who come to our events. Well, that's incorrect. If you come to our events, you have a better chance because we see you. And so that's the benefit of going to these combines, not just for consideration to our two different events, the Fox 40 Prospect Challenge and the CFC Prospect Game on TSN, but also for all of our rankings that you can find on our rankings tab on CanadaFootballChat.com.
Yeah, and the big thing is that you go to our events, and it doesn't matter what event you end up at. And I know sometimes it can be a little confusing because there's a lot going on.
There is, yeah.
But if you light up, for example, start at one of the base level events, the Fox 40. Mm-hmm. If you light up the Fox 40, your name's getting pushed to us. And if you're in the age bracket for the prospect game or the youth game,
right?
Yeah, yes. If you're in the kind of in the range for the prospect or the youth game, we're gonna find a way to either get your tryout to us, like what you've done so far, and then let's be honest, if you make the roster for either one of those games, it's most likely you're going to go on to one of our lists simply because you were in the top 10% of all the athletes that came to our stuff. Mm. Let's if there's 80 football players that get invited to our prospect game this year, I would say that's less than 10%. That might be 8%. That would put you in the top 8 percentile of the amount of athletes we looked at this year. So yeah, if you blew it up in those things, you're in the top 10%, maybe 8%, which means, yeah, you're going on a list. Sorry. Yeah,
and then, of course, the added kind of icing on the cake or cherry on top, however you want to say it, is that our combine scores do go to track and football down in the States who do the composite scoring for, they have, I think, almost 100 or 100 plus NCAA programs that they work with. So your numbers up in Canada are getting down to the States for them to look at. If you're a track athlete, that all of that gets put into that, and we're the only ones that are doing that up here in Canada.
Yeah, and the guys at tracking, they seem to have their feelers everywhere.
Oh yeah,
they get track stats before we get track stats, mm-hmm. and that's from Canadian events.
Well, they had AJU's.
They had all the scores. They had all the scores. They had all the scores. So they're doing an awesome job, internationally. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for kind of, well, how does this work for me? I think we're at the point now. I think in the past that there wasn't too many events or there wasn't too many companies, I guess you'll call it, or CFC organizations that advocate for players in Canada.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of climbing into the stratosphere or the range where we're getting on par or being better than most of those American options. I mean, we can't double what happens at an NCAA camp if you go there.
Yeah.
But everything else, I think if you're that Canadian kid who thinks he's too snooty to go to a Canadian event, I think you need to check yourself. Reevaluate, because we're at the point now where not only is like every U Sports program we somehow have a relationship with, but we're also now starting to get major headway down into the other parts of North America, in big thanks to the guys at Tracking, because I mean, we push all of our numbers to them. And in exchange for that, when they identify kids in their algorithm that are NCAA kids, and sorry, you're not all NCAA prospects, they do a great job of pushing it out.
They do, yeah.
And the flip side of that is, like, we don't sit here at CFC and sell the pipe dream to you. Like, we don't. Like, no. We're not calling kids, like, you're going to the show, like some of these other fly-by-night clowns. So anyways, I mean, and I'm not, I guess I shouldn't say that, but I mean, we don't make promises we can't back up. And my only point in my rant here is that I think we're at the point where a lot of those prospects who think that they're too big time for the CFC prospect game, you should probably check yourself now.
Yeah, I mean, it's national television, right? So it's a big deal up here for us, and I think it holds a lot of credibility, and it's a great event. I think if you talk and if you read some of the articles on CanadaFootballChat.com, it's the experience is really awesome.
Yeah, and if you don't believe what we're saying, or if you still don't have whatever, you go online and look. Like there's kids in our top 10 who, I mean, they get out there early and often, and they jump out and get all their offers, and they're out the gate.
Yep.
And for us, if a kid gets out the gate, well, that's awesome. We'll keep pumping them. Our whole goal is to, like, pump your name. Even if we never ever talk to you, even if we have no interaction with you, which is not the case. About 95% of the time, we have a pretty good relationship with all the kids that we advocate for. In the world of recruiting, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And if you want to see who knows us, you're very comfortable to go on and check out who follows us on social media. So those are the people who are actually looking at things, making decisions. And if you don't think that most recruiting is not done on social media, now you're crazy.
Well, didn't you have somebody on yours send you a direct message from one of the NCAA programs called you boss man?
Yeah, there was an individual. I can't remember all their titles because they seem to have more and more coaches on the staff. But Baylor University sent me a direct message and called me boss man. And then he politely asked, "Do you know who the next Chubba Hubbard and Neville Gallimore are in Canada?" And I responded to him, "Those types of athletes don't come along very often, especially like
we just don't have the population base."
Well, we have athletes that evolve into them. Yeah, my response was him.
Yeah,
I gave him the top running back and the top defensive lineman in the class of 2021, which is Armitage and I think Brendan. Is it Brendan Barrow? Pretty sure it is. Yeah. So, I mean, I gave him those things, but no offense to anybody, but like I would say Armitage has probably got a higher ranking than Neville did going into their senior year, so good for Aaron. Yeah. And then Brendan, well, I don't care who you are, there's not too many backs in all of North America that are going to be kind of in the same kind of boat as Chubba Hubbard. Because, well, you know, he ran for 2,000 yards. He almost broke Barry Sanders' record. Like, he almost broke, let me say that again. He almost broke Barry Sanders' record as a red shirt.
And how he didn't get nominated. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you don't like Canadian running backs, just say so, guys. Anyways, once again,
we're really getting off track.
He almost broke Barry Sanders' record as a red shirt sophomore. When Barry did it, he was a junior. After Barry was a backup for 3 years.
Well, what is he going to do next year now that he's going back to Oklahoma?
Well, obviously he's obviously a beast, right? So I'm assuming if you went in and checked their returners, I'm assuming that most of his offensive line is coming back So
Dude.
hopefully, if he goes into next year and he breaks Barry Sanders' record.
Jim Mullen, you got your work cut out for you.
Oh, yeah.
Scored.
I wonder who's winning the Cornish Award this year.
Yeah.
Anyways, my point is that Barry Sanders was just named one of the top 10 college players of all time. And Chubba almost broke his record as a sophomore. And you didn't give him an award. That's insanity. That's crazy. It's crazy. Actually, you know what?
I'm dying here.
We're so polite in Canada that I'm going to say it's okay next year, but that is not what I'm thinking right now.
It is not okay. It is not okay. Anyways.
Ugh.
Wow. So we are...
He almost broke Barry Sanders' record as a sophomore. I don't know if I mentioned that.
We are getting to the next part of our podcast, which is talking about the upcoming showcases in Vancouver, Surrey, and Montreal. So make sure you be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter @ChatFootball, and Instagram CFC_football, and YouTube. But let's get to it. Now that we've, expelled the demons, Clint, we've got Vancouver coming up on Friday. We've listed a few players that we've gone over through the registration. Now, depending on weather, we may or may not see some of them. But let's start off with Nathan Bushman. Is a class of 2021 defensive back / quarterback.
Yeah, Nate he
plays both ways from the Kelowna Owls. He's 6'1", 190 pounds. I watched it last year in the JV championship game that they won. Gifted athlete, has played on both sides of the ball. Was a centerpiece of that team in the championship game, and obviously the team. I mean, dude did everything basically. But he is a great athlete. He's coming to the event. Hopefully, traveling in from Kelowna. What do you think about Nate?
I'm a big fan of Nate. I remember I watched him last year and knew that he was going to... I didn't know, but I assumed, because I watched him play DB, too, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's a player. And then I know his team went on a tear once he became the starting quarterback this year. Mm-hmm. He was the big dog. He was the alpha during the Kelowna Secondary School's JV championship run. So that's what I saw. I heard a couple of coaches kind of I don't think he had a great game against VC in the playoffs. But I was like, when people say that that's probably the best VC team they've seen in a while, I'm going to hold off on the best team ever in BC high school football, because the best team ever was in 2017 when we scored 9 points in under a second. Hello. Anyways, but that was one of the more dominant BC teams I've seen. So when you say the kids struggled a bit against the Irish, everybody did.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, exactly. So Bushman's a player. He may project better as a safety and or a DB at the next level. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him in person, provided he gets over the Coca-Cola.
The next kid we've got is Chase Colte, I hope. Defensive end, class of 2021 from Foothill Falcons. So these guys are traveling all the way from Alberta because there was a scheduling conflict, or they missed the Alberta tryouts. And so they're really keen on getting to this tryout. That's dedication, especially right now. He's 6'2", 235 pounds. He has outstanding size and length, obviously. We're interested to see how he performs, like I said, coming all the way from Alberta. I don't really know a lot about him. What do you think?
I'm just intrigued off his height, his numbers. So his numbers, he's got a year left. He comes from a good program.
I think he's going to Holy Trinity Academy in Okotoks next year.
Okay, so Holy Trinity's not too bad
I thought that's where he was going. Anyways.
So either way, I'm intrigued just to see the 6'2", 235. And then, he's probably going to have an easier time getting to the Combine than kids from the interior, because he's going to fly in.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Right? And they're going to drive from the airport out to the Combine, which I'm sure they won't get in an accident, because they may very well be the only person on the highway who knows how to drive in the snow.
True. We're on fire. You're on fire today there, Clint.
I'm angry tonight. I'm angry.
So the next kid we have is Sterling May, class of 2021 again, defensive end from Belmont, who's over on Vancouver Island, 6'4", 200 pounds. He's a long, lean, prototypical rush end. Now, I talked to him last year at the Fox.
He's one of your favorites.
He is. This kid, oh my goodness, he is so hilarious. Like, I just laugh when I look at him and when I talk to him, but he is a great player.
Oh, he's a really good player. I know that...
he's just gangly, man.
Belmont's kind of doing the rebuild because they kind of didn't have the varsity team.
Yeah.
So when you bring up the whole group, it's tough. So maybe now they have that kind of feeder continuous thing going on. But yeah, Sterling has a great takeoff. He plays really hard too.
He does,
and I'm sure for them last year it was frustrating. I know they gave us a game at New West. I've always been a big fan. I'm hoping his frame fills out at some point. And then, yeah. But yeah, I've always been a Sterling May fan. There's like 3 or 4 kids on that Belmont team that are really worth taking a good, long, hard look at. Mm-hmm. Sterling's definitely one of them.
And then we've got Stephen Yang. Is it Yang?
Stevie Jang?
Yang. Offensive tackle from New Westminster High Axe. He's 6'5", 275 pounds. He has all the tools, but from what I understand, he's quite young to the game of football. He's only been playing 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
So he does need to learn. He's quite raw.
He's got a long way to go.
But with that frame, like...
When you see him in pads, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, he's huge.
But Stevie's got a lot to learn. He has the potential, though, because he can't teach what he has. And I'll take that a step further by saying the lower half of his frame...
He's thick.
...is probably the most impressive thing.
Yeah.
And make sure you factor that in with the fact that he is 6'5" and has super long arms. But the lower half, like I would say...
I think one of his legs is the size of both of them.
Yeah, he has huge trunk. You got to remember, he was a basketball player before he started playing football.
Yeah.
You know what? I coached Stevie at New West, and sometimes he gets lost on his way to the weight room.
Okay.
Yep. And Chubba Hubbard almost broke Barry Sanders' rushing record. So if Barry Sanders is the 8th best player of all time, would that make Chubba Hubbard number 9? And he still didn't get anything? Okay, thanks.
Our next prospect is another Kelowna Owls player from Caleb Schlatter.
Don't even try.
2021 receiver, 6'3", 185 pounds. He's another wiry, long, lean athlete. He plays both ways. Could he be the next great Kelowna receiver? Could Nolan Allen be handing over those reins?
Well, it could be Nathan Boscheman chucking the ball to old Caleb. I've seen him play. I was kind of impressed or intrigued with him as a defensive player, but I think Caleb could actually bulk up and be a really good H-back tight end.
Huh.
That's what I think. He's not like Nolan. Nolan was like freaky fast.
Yeah.
But Caleb, I think he would make a great tight end / H-back. But he also made some plays on defense when I watched the film. So he was impressive enough that we always do this and we always talk about this in the scouting bureau. We're watching the film, looking at other kids, and then you'll find yourself search up the other kid, watch his
following
film.
Another one, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the case with Caleb when we were actually doing some more research on Nolan. And we were like, 6'3", 185, we watched Caleb's film and we put him on the 100 right away. So, yeah.
Jackson Stubbings, class of 2021 receiver from Lord Tweedsmuir. 6'1", 160 pounds. He's athletic. He's quick. He showed well in the Tweedsmuir playoff run. I've seen him play a number of times.
Yeah.
I have always been impressed with him. What are your thoughts?
I think there's more athletes on that Tweedsmuir team than people give them credit for.
Yeah.
I think it goes beyond, like, the big kids this year were...
Noah Anderson and...
Noah's just a great kid on top of being a good player, but there's a boatload of athletes at Lower Tweedsmuir.
Who's that big kid, number 4, I believe?
Oh, Malik.
Yes.
Malik came back from the knee injury.
Naherny.
We didn't even know if he was going to come all the way back, so we actually took him off the list and then put him back on the list because he just has so much upside, so much potential, but we're not talking about him.
Sorry.
We're talking about we're talking about Jackson. I think Jackson was playing corner when we played them, and like he almost knocked out one of our mighty high acts, and I was like, who's that kid? But I mean, if you are a university coach and you're doing the rounds and you're not stopping by Lloyd Tweedsmuir over there in Surrey, you're not doing your job.
You're missing out.
There's athletes in that school.
Yeah,
there's so many athletes in that school.
Yeah. Linden Williams is a Mount Douglas Ram player, 2021 receiver, 6'1", 170. We really hope they don't cancel the ferries coming over from the island. But he's really put together. He's fast, and from what I understand, he is a track athlete, is he not?
Yeah, he's like actually like a legitimate track athlete who runs like 100. He runs like he's a sprinter. So he really impressed us last year at the FPC. And then, I mean, I'm not sure how his year went at Mount Doug because we played them early and then never saw them again the rest of the year. But I don't know, like, do they have like a cloning machine over at Mount Doug? Because they seem to get the best, like, and I'm not taking a shot here in any way whatsoever, but like, they had like 4 kids on their JV team that were unbelievable. And they always have like 5 or 6 kids on their varsity team.
Well, that team coming up for next year, I'm a little bit nervous.
I'm not nervous.
They look like they're going to be a great team.
Yeah. Well, I'm not nervous because the Hayeks got a new coach.
Anyways, Bronte Gallo is a tight end from Mount Boucherie. That's also in Kelowna, correct?
Yeah.
He's 6'4", 238 pounds. You gotta love 6'4", 238 tight ends in grade 11. And I mean, you just think he has a great name. What's with you and the names?
There's just awesome names. Like today, we get to talk about 2 young men. One of them is named Hunter Eagle. That's like naming your kid Death Star. And then there's Bronte Gallo, the Italian stallion, I'm assuming. But like he's in grade 11 and he's 6'4", 240 pounds. Like I wish I was like 6'4". Oh, I might be 240 right now, but I wish I was 6'4" in grade 11.
It sucks to be under 6 feet.
Well, actually, I'm 5'12".
You are not. You're 5'10". But you're a great linebacker.
I was a great linebacker. But I was like the kid there, Chubba. I didn't get any awards either.
So, did you just compare yourself to Chubb Hubbard?
Yeah. Well, we're both Cowboys.
You are a legend in your own mind.
Oh, yeah. I love myself. Okay,
so that's
moving on.
That's it with the Vancouver prospects. That'll be the first combine that I'm actually going to be able to get to as I hop around on my crutches. That'll be fun. But I'm really excited to see these guys play, or perform at least. So moving on to the Montreal Combine, which is happening on Sunday. Again, it's being run by Adrian, but we will be getting all of the information and feedback from him. The first player is William St. Pierre, class of 2020, defensive end, 6'4", 210 pounds. He's obviously a big, tall, long defensive end. Still hasn't started juvie. He's just heading into Sec 3, we believe.
Yeah, some of these kids are just moving up into their juvie careers. There seem to be a few of them.
Can you just explain for people listening the juvenile division and how the Sec 3, 4, and 5 work in Quebec, just briefly, just so that they can reference what we're talking about?
Yeah, so Sec 3 is grade 9. Sec 4 is grade 10. Sec 5 is grade 11.
And then they move on to CEGEP.
And then they go on to CEGEP, or they can go on to like a school post-juvie. So they could, a Canadian high school, they can go to a private school, they can go down to a prep school. And essentially what's supposed to happen in Quebec is you do Sec 3, 4, 5, and then you go to CEGEP for 2 years. And the first year of CEGEP is supposed to be like grade 12. Then the second year of CEGEP is supposed to be your preparatory for university. And if you go on the way you're supposed to, eventually you would end up in university and many of your courses would
transfer over. So therefore you're going into university essentially in your second year. Does the system work that way anymore? No. However, a lot of kids will go do their Sec 3, 4, 5, end up at a CEGEP, play for, say, 2.5 years, so 3 football seasons, and then they go on to university. Okay, so Will is just going into his juvie, we think. So grade 9.
Yeah, I mean, we looked for him and tried to find him, and we couldn't. We saw who his head coach was, so, I mean, we know where his head coach coaches, but it wasn't with the juvie team, so I'm assuming he's still in midget. Or he's still in, what do they call it? Is it Adam? I can't remember what they call it prior to juvie, because we never deal with it. But I mean, I'm under the impression he hasn't started juvie yet. So he's moving into it.
What do you think about him?
Well, I was just looking at it, and I was just like, okay, so...
height, length, kind of.
Yeah, if he's playing for that program, he's probably pretty good. And, I mean, say if he is grade 8 going into grade 9...
At 6'4".
6'2". I'm dead serious. What else? If he's not started juvie, what is he in?
Yeah, true.
So, and like the other 3 or 4 kids on that list are the same way.
Yeah.
So...
Well, we're going to see. We're going to find out. We'll get Adrian to clarify. Leclerc Raphael, another defensive tackle from Des Sentiers, I think, school, 6'2", 220 pounds. That's what it's listed on his registration form. We think he's another prospect with good size for his age.
Yep. With a lot of these players, we had a hard time hunting huddle. It would have been easier if we talked about them after the fact because Adrian's going to have all the combine scores.
Mm-hmm.
So that piece. So yeah, it's more of a height weight thing because like we always say at CFC, we are
height and weight snobs.
We're number snobs. So
which is a bit negative, but
it's not really negative. It's just the way the real world turns.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't fit into the cookie cutter, you're probably not going to get the same attention as somebody who does fit in the cookie cutter.
Or the initial look, yeah. Nathan Julien Blanc, 2022 defensive tackle from Collège Saint-Jean Vianney, 6'2", 220. He's got, again, great size. He does have film. Looks like he's got a good takeoff, and he's pretty destructive on his film.
Oh, yeah, he's one that had a pretty solid film. The other two didn't. We couldn't hunt them down. We found them on the rosters, but he actually had film, and he actually had good film. And he's long, and his grad class is 2022.
Sorry, yeah.
So yeah, so like he is grade 9. So yeah, he's going to be really good. And I'm just wondering if the last name Blanche, if he's a relative of or little brother of Jean-Samuel Blanche, who was like an all-Canadian defensive end at the University of Montreal, and I believe he's still on the Alouettes roster.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Philippe Champagne, 2020 linebacker, Seminaire Saint-Francois, is one of our CFC 50 high schools, 6'2", 170 pounds.
Yeah.
He's long, lanky, looks pretty fluid and athletic.
Oh yeah, if you want to see one of the crazier highlights for a linebacker in that age group, go watch Philippe Champagne's huddle film. I think it's his 3rd clip. He literally hurdles the running back, and then I think he pressured and or sacked the quarterback. But it wasn't like an ugly hurdle, like, oh, I jumped the running back and sacked the quarterback, and then you see that the running back fell down and you stepped over the running back. Like he literally 2-foot takeoff and jumped all the way over a running back.
It's impressive. And
landed like in his sprinter split stance and accelerated right away.
Yeah.
So if you look at the 6'2" piece, and then you're like, time for Philippe to bulk up, but like he is a legitimate athlete.
Well, and he's gonna get good coaching. He's with the Blizzard. That's a legit program, and they've got championship pedigree.
They were on a run for like 3 or 4 years.
They always go like they only lose one game or
yeah.
Like
I think they're getting a new facility too.
They are $3 million. I think was donated.
That's nice.
That's cool.
Yeah. Maybe the Rouge et Or can rent some space in their facility. Oh, they don't need it. But he's like just joking around.
Yeah.
I'll upset somebody in youth sports now, so sorry, but I was just joking. But Philippe Champagne, he just has all those intangibles. He'll bulk up. Watch. He's going to bulk up, and then he's going to go to CNDF. And then he's going to be a CJ All-Star. And then he's going to play for 3 years, and then he'll go play for the Rouge et Or. And then he'll win 2 rings, and then I don't know what comes after that.
Just sounds like a pretty good future projection, crystal ball prediction.
Just saying, let's see what happens.
Then we've got Nikola Brossard, a 2020 offensive tackle from Les Sentiers, 6'4", 210 pounds. Definitely a baby tackle prospect. Baby
tackles. We love baby tackles, especially like you'll see them. They're 6'4", 6'5". They're in that 225, 230 range, and those are the best ones because they're not like the tall, like carry too much weight prospect.
Mm-hmm.
They're like the lean one that you're like probably played basketball but is now transitioned to football, and we just need to fill his frame out. So he's going to be that big, tall, long tackle with the high, skinny calves, as opposed to the big tackle who doesn't have the tall, skinny calves.
And then we've got Yannick Daigle, 2020 quarterback from Chile, 6'3.5". I'm just going to round him up to 6'4", 196 pounds. He shows some flashes and looks like he has a ton of potential.
He has the potential, that's for sure. You're right about that. I think he was one of the top I think he had the top in terms of passing yardage. he might have been up there, or he was up in there. I know his touchdown interception ratio was a little out of whack. I think it was 6-9. But if you watch the film, he obviously can throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Young quarterback prospects who are 6'4", 200 pounds, and they show flashes of doing a bunch of good stuff. So he did that. So I mean, I'm not sure. I know the Triolet.
They're CFC 50.
Yeah,
team. So
they're in the mix usually.
Yeah, they're usually in the mix.
So, but he had a ton of passing yardage.
And then we've got Clark Leonard, 2021 receiver from St. Pat's High School. He's 6'3", 175 pounds. Is that St. Pat's in Ottawa?
I'm thinking it is.
Because the Ottawa kids come to the Montreal Combine.
That's their closest spot. So
yeah.
That would only make sense. But,
yeah, so he's 6'3", 175. You know, again, great frame. This young man falls right into our top 2 categories with our height and length prejudice.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is like you can't teach size.
Yeah, it's true.
You can't do it. Like I've heard that my whole life because I was a 5'12" linebacker. That you can't teach size. And I was like, that's okay. I'm 5'12".
And then we've got Simon Potvin, who is a 2021 tight end. I'm just like, we're dying today. Like, this podcast is hilarious. Anyway, 6'2", 212 pounds. Out of the prospects that we've identified heading into this combine, I would say that Simon is one of the more intriguing players. And I think he has the potential to be one of those great fullback, H-back type prospects. What do you think of that statement?
Which they seem to have in Quebec. Not to just nail it down to Quebec, but there's a lot of kids.
We've seen Simon a couple times, haven't we?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I know he was the most intriguing prospect.
We've been following him, but he's not. Yeah, this isn't the first time that we've heard or seen him.
But he catches balls really well. Mm-hmm. He runs routes really well. He blocks really well.
He's at Triolet. Sorry, I didn't say what school he was at.
Yeah, he's a really good one too. So I'm interested to see how he fits into the mix in one of these. I can pretty much just by gauging off of watching his film, I mean, there would be something really weird happen for him not to make it through to the next round. But I'm super interested to see how it goes for him. He's a player. We now have 600 kids on our list.
I know, we have a lot of kids.
So I have a lot of people who will call me and be like, is Jason good? And it's just like, no, I have no idea who you're talking about.
Yeah, we handle or deal with a lot of prospects. We watch a lot of film.
I go by list to list. So right now we're working on touching up the 2021 list and making the invites for the second round. So if your name's not in that kind of spectrum, and also on that note, for the 2020 final edition that just came out, there are a number of players who have declared their reclassification or post-grad. So there are, 6 or 7 players on the 2020 list that will be moving to the 2021 list. That being said, 6 or 7 new players will be put onto the 2020 final edition. We will not be making an official release. So make sure you have your CFC Insider Gold membership in order to view that ranking or all of the rankings that we're talking about. The 2021 will be coming out in February, the next edition. And then in March, it will be the first edition of the 2022 kids. So it'll be interesting for those kids, though, because those kids, we've actually known them for 2 or 3 years now without ever pushing them out on a list.
Yeah.
And so I think a couple of them are chomping at the bit.
So that's it for us today. What a whirlwind.
Wait a sec. Dylan Simpson, I saw you dunk the ball. Way to go, brah.
Yeah, Dylan could be one of those players that you may see on that 2022 list.
Okay. Dylan's a little freak. Hopefully he keeps...
He's not little anymore.
I get that.
Well, I saw him when he was little,
I saw him the first time.
Now he's this massive thing.
He was a golden man child. You should probably finish this up before we get any more. So
that's it for us today. Don't forget to register for all of these CFC events that we've been talking about, the Fox 40 Prospect Challenge and in BC and Ontario, and this CFC Prospect Game that is broadcast on TSN. If you didn't make the trials that have already happened, it's not regional. You can fly or drive to any of the other combines that are still yet to happen. That's no problem. obviously just sign up, register on CanadaFootballChat.com under the events tab. So be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, @ChatFootball, Instagram, CFC_football, and YouTube. And like I said earlier, don't forget to purchase your exclusive CFC Insider membership to get all this great daily football recruiting news from across Canada. This has been the Recruiting Masters, brought to you by the CFC Insider. Have a great week, everyone.